Okay, hello everyone. It is 12 o'clock and we have quite a bit to cover. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And if folks trickle in a couple minutes afterwards, no worries. But I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Patricia Miguel. I'm WABA's Community Outreach Coordinator. Pronouns are she and her. Um, and I've been with WABA since January. Um, and I'm not an expert on winter biking. So I definitely want to give a shout out to my manager and my co-host today, Ursula. Ursula, if you'd like to introduce yourself, and then I'll go over some housekeeping for today's webinar.
Hello, my name is Ursula. I'm definitely seeing, I know some familiar names in the participant list here. So hello, excellent people. Pronouns are she, her. I'm WABA's outreach manager now. I have been biking kind of year-roundish since about 2013, but kind of biases here of like background. I grew up in Seattle where it is rain and it's like, 38 a lot. And then I went to college in Maine at Bates. So that is, I came down to the district after that with a fair amount of just like equipment and stuff that is geared towards living in Maine and not freezing while walking between, campus buildings. So that kind of gave me a huge head start, especially in the like clothing department for winter riding.
Awesome. So like I said, I'm not an expert, so please bear with me. The way that this presentation, this webinar is going to be structured is that the first half will be, presentation based. I'll have slides. We're going to be going over clothing, lights, road conditions, sorts of things like that that relate to riding during the winter. And then the second half of the presentation, which I anticipate leaving about 30 minutes for, will be a Q&A session. So I invite people to unmute themselves and ask their questions aloud. We'll also be checking in the chat and then also sharing any tips that folks have learned over their period of time that they've been riding in the winter or that they've heard from friends. Another thing is that I will be covering quite a bit of stuff, but I'm going to be sharing out this presentation after today. So don't feel free or don't feel the need to jot it all down right now. If you miss something, it's not a big deal. Like I said, these slides will be shared out after the fact. So with that, let's begin. Awesome. Okay, so road conditions. First off, I just want to point out that little graphic at the top. It might be covered by our pictures. Oh, it's not. Okay, perfect. So you might have to lean in a bit closer to look at it, but this is something that Ursula shared given her time spent in these colder weather climates of how you should be walking on slippery road conditions. So definitely give that a look. Not bike related necessarily, but important to realize that walking on ice or in slippery conditions, you have to slow down. You should be making slower movements. Your weight should be over your midsole and kind of like waddling like a penguin so that you don't slip and fall. But let's get to it. So road conditions, it's really important that you be wary of paint or metal because that's slippery. Bridges get icy and cold first and freeze. So that's something to be aware of. You should also be aware of potholes, especially given that potholes can, be harder to view when it's darker outside or when there's snow covering it. It's hard to judge the depth of the road. Something else with the moisture that the winter weather brings and the salt that road crew lays down, it can lead to corrosion. So with that, we recommend, wiping off your bike and adding some chain lube so that things are running smoothly and that you don't have any corrosion. Also, another thing to be to be mindful of is that when you're first starting out, going out for your ride, watch out for your rear tires slipping from when you're starting from a standing stop. You should also be pedaling smoothly. Try to maintain a steady pace, and don't go too fast. You should also start to brake early and slow down before you start turning. You can't brake and turn at the same time. You have to do one or the other. So make sure that you're at a comfortable speed so that you can make that turn, and not topple over. Another thing to keep in mind is to feather your brakes. So wet, cold rubber is not as effective as stopping you as when they're dry. So something that you might want to do is just tap your brakes lightly, to get them to dry off before you need to use them so that they're ready to be used. All right, now for lights. So there's a lot of different options out there when it comes to lights. There are lights that are meant to help you to see things, but then there's also lights that help others see you. It's just remember to be considerate of others around you. So people who are oncoming in your direction, make sure that your lights aren't pointing straight out in front of them. That distracts them or keeps them unable to see what's coming. And then also be mindful that blinky lights can trigger seizures or other health hazards. So just be mindful of that as well. Another great thing to help others see you is reflector tape. So rather than buying a bunch of new gear or specific clothing, you can adapt what you already have by buying some reflective tape and sticking it onto maybe your back so that people who are coming up behind you can see, when the light hits it, can see that there's something in their path, or onto like a handlebar bag for others who are coming towards you. That's just a helpful thing to have. All right, clothes. So one question that you should be asking yourself is, what is your warmth priority? Is it your face? Is it your legs? Is it your core? Is it your hands? Perhaps it's your ears more specifically. So just keep that in mind, thinking about what is your warmth priority? What do you need to be warm in order to have a comfortable and smooth ride? Another thing with clothing, layers, layers, layers. Layers are very important, but you also should keep in mind that while you're biking, you're going to be moving, and your body's going to produce heat. So you should wear less layers than when you're just standing outside, because you are going to generate that heat. You should have a base layer for wicking and drawing moisture from your body. Your mid layer will be, your warm, snuggly stuff like a fleece, something. And your outside layer should be something that protects you from the elements. So from the wind, the rain, the snow, whatever happens to be going on outside. Also, you should just pick clothing that you're comfortable, warm, and safe in. Something that I'm going to stress now, but it's definitely going to be brought up at different times during this webinar, is that you don't have to go out and buy all these new clothes. Just look in your own wardrobe and see what you have and see if it can work. It doesn't have to be bike specific. Just go into your wardrobe. Like, this isn't a bike specific sweater, but I could definitely see myself wearing this as a mid layer because it's a thick knitted sweater that'll help me stay warm. It's soft, and would work just fine. Now we're going to move into specific types of clothing materials, fabric. So wool is a great fabric. Some of the pros is that it's highly insulating, but it's able to manage the moisture really well. So when you get a little bit sweaty, it's not going to just stick to your body. It's actually going to pull away without drawing away any heat from your body, making you more cold. And then also with that, some of the cons are that it's hard to care for. A lot of the times you'll see on the label like hand wash, or don't wash it in warm or hot water. So that's something to be aware of. Another thing is that some people are allergic to wool. Some alternatives include cotton flannel, polyester fleece, and tencel. Wool overall, though, is a great base or mid layer because it helps with temperature control. And some places that you can find it include thrift stores, Costco, especially outdoor stores like REI or LL Bean. But I definitely recommend thrift stores because wool can also be kind of expensive. So finding it secondhand is a great option. Next is silk. Silk is another great fabric. It's a light layer so that you can wear it, close to your skin without adding any bulk. So if you're worried about, it getting caught in things or whatever, you can keep it nice and tight to your skin. It's also a great natural temperature regulator. So you can wear it not only in the cold weather, but you could also wear it in the warm weather because it's great at keeping your body warm when it needs to be warm and slightly cooler in the hotter temperatures. Some cons, however, do include that it's hard to care for, again, just like wool. It's also harder to source, which means that it can be pricey. And it's not a great bulk layer. So if you're looking to be all bundled up and cozy, silk is not really going to be your thing. It's really just a thin base layer that's going to help keep you warm. A good alternative to silk, because silk does have that higher price tag, would be rayon. And some places that you can find this are thrift stores or specialty outdoor stores as well. Cotton. I'm sure everyone owns a piece of cotton, so I won't spend too much time on this fabric, but the bad thing about cotton is that it's a bad insulator. So it doesn't hold heat when it's wet. It'll actually make you colder if you start to sweat because it's going to draw out any heat that you have when it's taking away that water. This is best for a middle layer or jeans or just regular clothes, but it's not necessarily the best for winter riding. The next thing are synthetics. So this includes polyester, nylon, polypropylene. Some pros of this is that there's different properties depending on the design of it. So some fancy manufacturing will make it warmth specific or moisture wicking, which can be really good. And it's also easier to source and it's pretty durable. Some cons is that it can get smelly. However, some manufacturers do put in an odor blocking finish. So that way it doesn't get as smelly. It's, wicking. You can wear it a couple more times than say another type of fabric. Synthetics overall are good windproof and waterproof outer layers, as well as long underwear. So it could be that outer layer or it could be that base layer. It really just depends on how the manufacturing company designed it. And some places that you can find this include thrift stores, specialty stores, and just about everywhere else. There are a lot of synthetics out there. For some other clothing resources, I've hyperlinked a couple of resources that you can check out later. But I do want to mention Terry. Terry is a great brand that offers extended sizes. But something about Terry is that it's a bit pricey. So just keep that in mind. And then there are a couple of articles I linked as well for other recommendations of clothing to wear, brands, and other tips for riding in the winter. So now we're on to the tips and tricks. So this is where I'm going to spend a bulk of my time because I, kind of quickly went through the clothing recommendations or the fabric recommendations. But these are just random tips pertaining to clothing or gear or riding in the winter in general. So something to be mindful of is that batteries don't hold a charge as long as they would if it were warmer. So in the colder weather, just be mindful that your lights or your phone or whatever technology that you have that does run off of a battery tends to lose its battery power a lot quicker in the cold. So maybe that means bringing along an extra set of batteries in your bag, or keeping a cord handy so that if you need to stop and charge up, you can do so. Another thing would be to bring extra clothes with you. You can bring it to work, you can bring it to wherever you just happen to be, so that if it does get colder, if it does start to snow later in the day, you'll have that as an option and you'll be warm and you won't have to tough it out. Another great thing are trash bags for helping you waterproof your things. So in a pinch, you can just grab a trash bag, throw it over your backpack, and that can help you save your electronics and papers and all the other important stuff that you're carrying with you. Another great thing to keep in mind is that your locks actually can freeze in this colder weather. So one great tip would be to warm it up with a lighter. Another thing might be rubbing alcohol. That can help unlock or get it to unfreeze so that you can unlock your lock with ease. Another thing, although it might be a little bit tricky, depending on the traffic pattern, when you're stopped at a red light, you could get close up to the car wheel wells because they produce a lot of heat. So if you get a little closer to it, that'll help you, for that 5 seconds, stay a little bit warmer, which is nice. Another thing to keep in mind, long coats are great. It's covering a lot more of your body than if it were to just stop at your waist. But they might obscure your rear lights. So people who are coming from behind you might have a hard time seeing you if there's no other light source or reflector that can illuminate you in the darkness. Also, this is very important. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. So I would definitely recommend carrying your Metro card in the winter, in the summer, in the spring, in the fall, whenever. Carry it with you and get to your destination maybe faster, but definitely warmer and drier. You don't have to prove to anyone that you are tough. We are all capable and more than willing to do it. But if you don't have to, don't do it. Hop on that Metro, hop on that bus. Oh, and then lastly, I also wanted to highlight some accounts to follow. Again, I will be sharing out this presentation so you can click through the links. Black Women Bike, Black Girls Do Bike, WTF Bike Explorers, Ciclista Zine, Decolonized Bikes, Pedal to the People, Melanin Base Camp, All Mountain Brothers. These are great accounts to follow, who I follow, some of them I follow, and have definitely leaned on to help me put together this presentation. All right, that concludes it. I think we have plenty of time. We have 40 minutes to do a quick little Q&A, followed by, or in conjunction with sharing tips and tricks. So I'm gonna go ahead and exit out of this presentation actually so that people can see each other and hear each other without the distraction of the presentation.
There were some questions in the chat though. Recommendations for base layer material. I know we kind of answered that at the wrap up. I'm very clearly this is a smart wool shirt. I'm pretty firmly in the like wool camp for many of my layers, base layer included, because it's antimicrobial, because it wicks and retains that heat. But there are a lot of synthetics that also do a great job. At this point, a lot of like modern athletic stuff for all sorts of activities are lots of different varieties of synthetics.
I also saw from Elizabeth, thanks for sharing that you don't have to hand wash wool. I've always thought that you do have to hand wash it. I guess, You just have to find the right setting on your washing machine, but just make sure that it's on cold. So that's a +1 for another +1 for wool.
If it's not, probably if it's not a hand knit,
Mm.
if it's machine knit like the Smartwool, yeah, just like put it in the washer on cold, especially. And cold is gonna also help keep reduce wear and tear on garments generally. So that's kind of a thing. So you can have you can have your stuff for longer.
I'd say just layer up. And then also, if you have the time, do a quick little loop around your neighborhood or wherever you're at and see how you are before you're leaving your home. Just like as a test run, see if the layers that you have on are enough, are too much. Testing out your route ahead of time, just like you might do to test out a new route, would be a great suggestion.
And if you stand outside for like 30 seconds and you feel like a little bit cold, you're probably close to where you should be for layers, because you're gonna like make up that from slightly cold to like feeling good with moving your body. I know for me, I'm petrified of being cold. I always have backup layers in my bags. And yeah, as Lori is putting in chat, you can always take things off, and especially a lot of different kinds of layers, like especially on the silk end. Like if you have an extra stuff in your bag, it's not that heavy. It doesn't take up a lot of space, but it can really be that kind of at least mental, if not actual, kind of backup if you're feeling slightly chilly. Yeah, I mean hands and feet can, yeah, like they're tricky, and there's kind of a wide range of, especially for all of us, of like kind of how sensitive and like how much blood circulation all of us get. Latex is a like very short term, like can be helpful. But I've done this at Capitol Bike Show when I was doing maintenance, and it was like those cold, rainy days where you're outside and you're just like, you just can't have your like hands get warm. And the problem with it is that you sweat, and as Jessica is saying, the latex doesn't breathe at all. So you just have like this cold sweat on your hands that just stays with you all day. So don't do it for keeps. For me, I am fully in wool socks, potentially 2 layers with my hiking boots if I really need to keep my feet warm. I often am wearing tights in the winter as kind of a bottom continuity layer, and that's a good kind of, so I don't have any gaps between my shoes and my socks and my pants. And I will often also layer for my hands too. I found for my shifters for my bike, I'm fine wearing mittens. I can still shift like this and stop. Other bikes that this, if you've got like thumb stuff, it does that may a little bit more tricky. Lobster gloves, which are the ones that, do the Vulcan, right? Am I getting my pop culture references correct? Are popular because you have a little more options for fingers. And it's like the more you keep your body parts together, the more they can build up that like collective heat of everything. And then I have, so these are merino wool liner gloves that if it gets really cold, I'll add these underneath. These are felted wool, and I often actually overheat in these because they're just so thick. But some days they're really cold. And these are, I think there's an Ibex actually, which I think is back as a company. Um, and this is a great like base layer for my hands of merino wool. The problem with these is that they're really thin, and they'll get little mini holes in the fingertips. So if you want them to last, you have to mend them and just take some wool darning thread and cover up the holes. So now I just kind of have a lot of my fingers are are fixed. But that's enough for me.
I did also
Yeah.
want to uplift one of the comments that I saw in the chat. Someone recommended bar mitts, which I know I've heard other people mention in the past. Some people like them, some people don't like them. It's really, again, just finding what works for you. I would also second shoes. I wasn't really thinking about it, and I just went in my like running shoes / walk around, do errand shoes. And because they're running shoes and are designed for breathability, my feet got really cold. So just keep that in mind. But I'm wondering if others have suggestions for shoes that aren't leather. In the chat, it looks like Jessica said that for hands, bar mitts, silk or wool liner, large lobster gloves. You can hold hand warmers on the back of your lobster gloves inside. I've seen a couple other people also mention chemical, hand warmers that you break or shake to get activated.
Yeah, shoes are tricky. For really cold days, I'll wear my hiking boots because I can fit a bunch of wool socks under them, and they're designed to be water resistant. Well, except for the one hole that I haven't, because they're like 8 years old at this point. But I know for other folks, they that shoe covers are a fairly popular thing, that allow maybe a bit more flexibility in like what shoes you're wearing. But especially like the neoprene ones can kind of be that insulating and like windbreaker thing, so that the rest of your foot layers can kind of do that job of keeping the heat, and there's an outside like wall of nope, wind, you're not getting in.
It looks like Jessica shared a couple suggestions in the Q&A.
They're essential for me. I really can't go out in the winter without them. But even inside the bar mitts, I'll put a chemical hand warmer to sort of warm up the inside of it. It's really a windbreaker more than anything else. So I still need to wear gloves underneath. And I layer my gloves just the way I layer my body. Wool or silk is the first layer. And I have a very good pair of lobster gloves. And I buy the lobster gloves a size up so that if it's really cold, I can put a chemical hand warmer on the backs of my hands inside. If I have cold hands, I'm done because I can't feel my breaks.
It looks like there's another question from Elizabeth. Any tips for navigating in slippery winter weather? So we went over this a little bit in the start of the presentation, but just go at a steady pace. Try not to go too fast. Pedal smoothly. Be aware that your rear wheel can slip out from underneath of you when you're starting from a standing stop. Also feather your brakes because that's where moisture can collect. So just like prep them by, tapping them slightly to remove some of that moisture so that when you do need to use them, the contact is fine and it's not going to slip off.
And the like classic New England thing here is if it's real, like, black ice or like wet pavement from rain, like you can do one thing at a time. You can either be stopping or turning. And just don't do anything sudden. But if you do hit something where you feel like you're maybe losing control of your bike, actually kind of let your handlebars like wiggle a little bit, and that your forward momentum will likely carry you through whatever that sketch spot is. It is very easy if you try to like correct for what is happening to like overcorrect and then come like tumbling down. And especially if you're on black ice, if you slam on the brakes, that's going to definitely cause you to no longer be upright on your bicycle. So a lot of those, like it can totally feel scary, but just kind of letting it ride it out for that short section will most of the time end up okay, and then you can like get to the pavement with some better grip and figure out, okay, cool, like was that a one-off? Do I need to like maybe walk home from here? I know there's many of us may remember, was it 2013? There was like that one commute. It was an evening commute in the winter, like 2013, where it was just like the district and region had a lot of black ice for one night. And like all of us, many people coming from offices spent like 3 times as long trying to get home because just like all of the roads were black ice and it was just a one-off thing of terrible. There's a good question in the comments. I don't think we've seen any product recommendations. I don't have any. Anyone have experience with rechargeable heated gloves? And are there any rechargeables that folks might suggest?
Just reading this out loud. So Jessica says that they've tried a pair some years ago and they were honestly underwhelmed. They're expensive and the battery is heavy. Looks like someone has a question about bar mitts. Can you put them on, take them off easily? Are they on for the winter? Would be a problem in the bike room. I don't have experience with bar mitts, but Jessica says that they're easy to take off and on, which is really great.
I do tend to see folks committing to bar mitts of like, like putting them on for the season, like you would other kind of seasonal transitions. But yeah, my hands tend to run warmer than some other folks, so I don't use bar mitts. And a question from Karen: anyone have article recommendations for shoes in cold weather? Patricia linked a few different companies and organizations. REI actually tends to have some great kind of comprehensive winter stuff advice, though they certainly, for recommending probably would recommend their own products. Jessica's giving a shout out in comments to Lake making excellent winter cycling shoes, and that actually is kind of faintly ringing from what I've heard from other folks, and again the prod to eBay and buying used. But if anyone else has article recommendations and for shoes, and yeah, both Patricia and I will give it a think before we send out the email about shoes, so we can kind of better add a bit more.
Hi, this is Laurie again. And I just wanted to make a quick recommendation that you can do if you get caught in the snow with your bike. Just like your car, they used to tell you to let out a little bit of air in your tires. You can do that with your bike. So if you're at work and it happens to snow on you and there's a little snow when you want to go home, just let out a little air on your tires. That would give you more tire surface to the ground to help you with your stability.
Well, this is a great tip too that I just want to say out loud. Elizabeth says that they clip a little reflective triangle light to their wrist to their wristband of their mittens, so drivers can see the blinking light when they raise their hand to signal turns and what they're doing. That's a great idea. I guess also on the same point of lights and reflective stuff, because we're in the winter time and it is getting darker earlier, keep that in mind. You know, you might be thinking, oh, this will be a quick errand, and you're not thinking about the time, and time just passes by, and before you know it, it's dark. So it's important just to bring along lights in your bag. So in the case that it does get dark, you're able to be seen by other cyclists, pedestrians, other roadway users.
Recommendation from Karen in the comments. They buy slaplets as turn signals, and they cost about $10, and you can get them online, as well as hardware stores, Home Depot, etc. And yeah, just kind of, I know there's some other stuff that I will use, like hardware store equivalents. One thing we haven't mentioned is eye protection. And I know for me, the hardware store prompted it. For a while, I was buying the clear safety glasses for riding in the winter, because especially like barreling down hills on my commute, and also wearing contacts most days, the wind in my eyes would get really cold. And then I would start like, you know, tearing up and having a hard time seeing. And so clear windbreakers over my eyeballs, kept me warmer, but also gave me what I needed to be on the road safely.
And circling back to the point about eye protection, I've heard people repurpose things like ski goggles for fitting over glasses particularly. So if you don't wear contacts and wear glasses and have a problem with the wind hitting you or the cold air hitting your eyes and making you tear up, just putting goggles over top of your glasses, so that way you can see and also don't tear up and have dry eyes.
Oh, we also haven't talked about the glories of neck tubes, buffs. This is another thing that is one of my base layers, and it just is a, you know, very long neck tube of merino. This is merino wool, and it's a great kind of, it breaks that barrier between my shirt and like my chin. And I will often, if it's cold, also layer like more scarves. I've been known to add up to like have like 4 like neck layers going on if I really need to stay warm. But this is just like on me constantly, and you can also, you know, kind of like pull it up to your nose as a extra warmth thing, at least back when we weren't all wearing masks when we were outside. So this winter is gonna add some additional challenges. Shout out in the comments to the Lumos helmet, which has the integrated light in the front and the back, that they've found has been very visible.
I would also say that like finding places where you can get out of the elements, whether that be the wind, the snow, the rain, the sleet, whatever is out there and is making it uncomfortable, just so that you can take a break for a little bit, whether that's like a little pavilion that's at a park or a tunnel or some other sort of structure that you can just take a minute to catch your breath and get out of the elements.
Linda's doing the shout outs. Yeah, you can use the neck gaiter to also turn it into a hat. Which, you know, if you're not doing it on this camera, you may look a little more sophisticated. Which I've definitely done. If I, for me, my ears are one of the things, like I don't need the top of my head to be as warm, but if my ears are cold, then I am a miserable human being. So this is a running outdoor research ear band thing. that somehow this thing costs $20, which I don't know how that happened. Fashion pricing is weird. But as long as I don't lose this little thing, it really has been a headbands of just this is my always in the bag, as one of those like backup things. And if you want to learn more about balaclavas, the like full face stuff, Bike Arlington is doing a baklava and balaclava workshop online only tonight. This headband, I can kind of see the branding still. I've managed to not lose it for a number of years now. Is from Outdoor Research. But any of the like outdoor gear companies will have something similar. And I know I've heard some shout outs for that Rafa has a good merino wool hat that also like scoops down and will often cover the ears. That is great. I will say you kind of I have some humps against them in terms of size exclusivity and really kind of catering to thin folks only, not as being as broad in their thinking.
Lori shared that arm sleeves are another great way to provide warmth, which is a great recommendation. I saw earlier too, somebody said a vest. So I imagine you could even pair like a vest to keep your core warm and arm sleeves so that in the event that you do get hot as you go along your route and time elapses, you just take off your arm sleeves, put them in your pocket and keep riding. So that way you don't have to make a complete stop to take off a whole outer layer and keep riding. This is something that I forgot at the beginning of the presentation, but I did want to frame this whole talk within the scope of the pandemic and WABA as an organization. And as some of you might have seen or might not have seen, WABA has decided to once again stop any in-person events in an effort to reduce the spread of COVID. So with that in mind, I would encourage you all to make safe choices and do what feels right to you all. Jessica shared the tip of getting the disposable heat backpacks for back pain, the ones that you wrap around or maybe even stick on, and putting it around your waist under your clothes so you're extra cozy. That sounds like a really nice suggestion. Someone else, Linda, says that they suggest experimenting with layering and temperature and whether it's cloudy or sunny, and then just make a mental note so that you are prepared next time when you have to do a ride. Elizabeth said at this time of year that they like to don battery-powered Christmas lights. Awesome and cheery. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Like I said, I'm going to be sharing out that presentation, and in that presentation, there were a couple slides that had links to other groups, as well as articles and other sorts of resources. Definitely check those out. They have a great tips and other information about riding in the winter. Again, we're not experts, so we really enjoyed having you all chime in, sharing your experiences. I know I learned a lot, so that again, I just wanted to thank you all for joining us today.